Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Life in the Philippines. You know, my theory about life happens while you're planning it. There are many events, people who come into your life and changes the direction of your life, changes your plans a little bit. One of you could be the lucky owner of this fine fixer-upper yacht here, motor yacht. It looks like you already have a crew just waiting for you to float it and get it back on the sea. This is a walk I took across the what they call the old two-lane bridge from Cebu City, Mandaue City, over to Mactan Island, and I walked across here a number of times. Always find it interesting. Meet a few people along the way, other people walking. And here is the start of my walk over not so far from what's it called, Gaisano Island Mall, maybe it's called, over in that direction. Then I walked a few blocks from there down to this bridge. There's a second bridge, a four-lane bridge that is newer, that many people use, farther behind me. There's a third bridge that will be finished maybe in a year and a half or so on the south end of Cebu City area, going over to the south end of Mactan Island. And anyway, I decided I was going to walk across. I want to take some video and some film like that boat over on this side, so I decided I was going to cross the road and go up this side, but eventually I had to, because the motorbikes were using the path, I had to cross back over to the other side. That dog, what's that dog doing? Huh? Good thing I chased him away. Anyway, going to chat a little bit about life here in the Philippines as we find it here in early 2021, and what I think it will end up being here as we go forward. Going to stop and have a short chat with a few people along the way, and I'll let you in on that. Dogs, and more dogs. Just leave them alone and they will probably leave you alone. Most of them are not aggressive. I found that if I walk at night, a bright flashlight seems to confuse them and they leave me alone. Here in Cebu City, quarantine passes or some type of work pass is still required to go out and move around. There are still some checkpoints that are set up, and they have either military or PNP, Philippine National Police, manning some of those. More so at night in the evening, closer to the curfew time, and then during the day. And here, that narrow path there to walk up, the motorbikes are using that. I decided to cross over here and not meet them head on, them being faster, more rigid than I am, and go up here ways and I'll move back over to the other side. Anyway, I always go out. I get from security. We have, I think we have a couple of passes per day to share with about 50 people in the condominium. Several of the people that live here, I think, have work passes, so some days the pass is available, some days it's not. So you just work with that system. It's originally they told us that there would be, each household would get a pass. Some went back in, I forget, March, April, May, whenever it was, they come out with these. And never happened. They cut it way back so that they would force just a few people out. What is it? What is it? Wild. What's the name? What's the name of it? I don't know. Oh, you make soup? Soup? Okay. Too much noise, so I couldn't hear the answer there. They picked the wild leaves and weeds and stuff along the plants, along the side of the road there, and then they make something out of it. I said soup. They said no, they maybe something with other meat and fish and different things in it. Somebody watching this video will know. Anyway, I had to take care of some business over in Mactan, so I took a taxi over to Mactan, and but I wanted to take some video and get some healthy walking in, some fresh air, some sun to get vitamin D. So here I am walking. Now there is talk, after the holidays there were a number of what they call positive tests, they call them cases, for a virus that have come out more. They expected that to happen because many more people were around family, those types of things, and more people are going to get any types of flus or viruses, whatever that's in the neighborhoods. They expected that. There is a little bit of talk. In fact, I think they have done a tighter lockdown in 2 or 3 places in the Philippines that had more cases. I'm always interested in the logistics, and the logistics are very difficult, if not impossible, to get unless you're in that medical field, perhaps, and then maybe they're still impossible to get for every region. Who are you testing? Are you only testing people who are ill? Are you going out into the areas that, if you find one case, are you going into that area and concentrating your testing there? I've looked at data for many countries and nations and counties and provinces around the world, and some of them will have a 3% positive rate, some a 6, some a 10, 12, 20%. Some will have 100% testing positive. So it comes down, well, who are they testing? Just people who are showing up sick at the hospital? So simple numbers really don't tell you the whole story. But basically, what they're saying, they're keeping an eye on things. They're watching the numbers. If they do any lockdowns, they'll do it what they call, I think, granular. Just shut down this street, this neighborhood, and not complete barangays, complete cities, complete provinces. That's what we're hearing. Now, I stopped at a relatively new hotel on Mactan to check and see what their rates were, and they were saying that after January 30th, they are not taking any more bookings. And I said, well, why is that? Because the government hasn't told them whether, basically, we go month to month here, like you do in many parts of the world. Each month they come up with new rules and regulations and restrictions. And they said we can't plan for the future because the government will not give us any assurance that they will continue to allow travel, hotels to be used, resorts to be used. So it really is, they're even continue to devastate an industry, the hospitality industry, hotels, Airbnbs, rentals, and resorts and such, because companies just cannot plan. Now, there is a huge, very popular resort type area in Manila that recently just closed its doors, and I've read that there are a few hotels that might have 20% occupancy, but most hotels have, it's in the single digits, 9% or less, and you can't make a profit, you can't survive on that type of thing. I'm going to have a chat with these boys here. They're doing some work.
Is this the elevator?
Yeah.
Is this I go down the bottom level here?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Then,
Oh.
you know, after that, 20,000 mabago to. Mag-inood na. Very critical.
Oh.
Very critical.
Yeah.
But I know you safety.
Oh, yeah. Safety.
Oh.
So you putting in new bolts?
No.
What are you doing?
Pin.
Pens. Pens. Ah. Pens. Okay. Very good. Salamat.
Salamat.
Yeah.
Picture. Selfie, picture.
Yeah, video. Video.
Thank you.
Video.
Very nice.
Yeah.
YouTube.
YouTube is Amazing Philippines.
Yes.
The name YouTube channel, Amazing Philippines.
That's why. Very
Okay.
nice.
All right.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Stay safe. Oh. Yeah.
I continue to find the Filipino people some of the friendliest, most helpful people in the world. Even if they often don't understand me, they try to have some type of conversation and interact with me. And I'm not sure what they're doing here, but they're very safety conscious, and work is being done a little differently than it is in many of the U.S. states, where you might have a very large crew of people. You would have police vehicles out here stopping, directing people. In the Philippines, doesn't normally happen like that. You've got a couple people, and may or may not even have a red cone to put out there. The present situation is that, and every island, every province is a little bit different, but we're able to travel somewhat, at least day trips, on each particular island. And each island is a little bit different. Some are locked down harder. Iloilo and Bacolod City were both locked down longer than Cebu City in the end. Cebu City was one of the cities that locked down harder earlier on, but now it's allowed more businesses to open. Yet there are many thousands of businesses that have closed permanently, it seems. And going into the malls before Christmas, when many businesses make most of their profit, most or all of their profit, in the U.S., I know, probably around the world. There were very few people in the malls, and still very few people in the malls. So I suspect that more businesses will be closing up until the economy comes back, and that really relies on the tourism business, on foreigners being allowed in here. My take on that is that, there are, as you all know, there are a number of vaccines that are being looked at and tested and approved or not approved. Distribution has become an issue around the world, with the drug companies not able to produce the numbers that they thought they could, and there are problems with the overall distribution of all this type of thing into the states and communities. Here, the LGUs, the local government units, are told to coordinate with the federal government, but they are allowed to buy their own vaccines, determine what they're going to buy, I guess, from what I've read. It seems to change on a weekly basis, so we'll see what happens. The other very good news, I think, and it's disturbing that there aren't more countries and more of this information out in the media. There are a number of drugs that are having good results in treating those people who are ill and severely ill, and maybe I'll put a link in the description to at least one of those videos by a doctor. There is one or more very common, inexpensive drugs that are being used for prevention and treatment of it, and have been used around the world for, I think, 20 years or more, for animals as well as humans. Ivermectin is the name of it. Several of you are aware of that, have done a little research yourself. And there are dozens of tests going on in the U.S. and Europe, in other parts of the world with this, and there seem to be some very positive results. You don't have the issues that you have with these vaccines that really haven't been tested very long on a wide group of people, and very little in the way of side effects. So it's disturbing that countries and the medical establishment isn't really pursuing those types of things. Some doctors are. They use it off-label, I think is what they call it, and they're having very good success in treating patients with this virus. Worth checking out, ivermectin. There is talk, of course, many of you know, of some kind of vaccine visa and passport in order to travel. We'll see how that all pans out in the end. There's still many people that are uncomfortable. I've read about some of the side effects, the issues. One or more countries have said maybe it's not good to give the elderly who are not well, because they've had some issues with some of them having reactions and some dying, as a matter of fact. So it's one of the things you deal with when you have a new vaccine on the market that has been rushed to market. I would expect, I'm hoping that something like ivermectin becomes accepted, an accepted treatment, an accepted quote-unquote vaccine alternative. One thing I predict that will happen if they make it very difficult and expensive for people to travel. In fact, I suspect that will happen to some degree. Maybe they'll figure it all out in the long run, but the more restrictions you put on things, just like Thailand and Philippines, they've opened up different resort type areas, but there's still too many restrictions, too many risks involved and costs involved, so they're getting very few people going to these places. Same thing with travel around the world. If you don't have enough foreign travelers so that you can get the airline industry back, airline prices will probably go sky high eventually, with only a few very rich people traveling. So there again, you will continue to devastate whole industries: the airline industry, the travel industry, the hotel, hospitality industry, the resorts. It should be easy enough to figure that out, to understand that early on, and not a year or two later, as these industries and the people and the livelihoods continue to suffer. Anyway, I guess I'm glad that I'm stuck here in the Philippines instead of many of the other countries that are having strict lockdowns around the world. At least I can move out around a little bit. So anyway, thanks for coming. See you next time.